Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third and final revision series, the last minute tips for writing exam. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand you straight over to Elaine.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so welcome this afternoon on this absolutely glorious day again. Well, it certainly is up here in Leeds, and I know it's decent weather down in Brighton, where my colleague Emma and Brian are at the moment. So draw your attention to the last minute listening tips and reading tips. I know that the German and French exam, listening and reading GCSE exams have already taken place. One of them which was today, but I know the Spanish is coming up on the 6th of June, so it may well be that you missed the listening and reading sessions that we did over the last 2 weeks that Brian mentioned being the first and second sessions. They're only 30 minutes long, and you'll get this PowerPoint presentation after this session tonight, which I know Brian will send out, and you can click on the links here and you will get access to the listening and reading recordings, and also we can send the resources out if you would like those as well. Another session that we're running for secondary is on Tuesday the 20th of June at 4 o'clock. This will be on maintaining engagement in languages, in language teaching at Key Stage 3, and if you want to register for that event, again it's free and you don't have to be a subscriber to Language Note. You can just click on there to register on Eventbrite and you'll get a link to join at the session. Again, that session will be recorded and any resources will be sent out. Okay, so as you know, Emma and myself, Emma will be presenting the second half of this session. I'll do the first half as we've done in the last 2 weeks. We've had lots of experience between us, and that's just a little bit of our bios. I always make sure that people understand that we understand that a lot of the ideas that we use come from our own practice and from colleagues that we know, and also from people that we sort of speak to on social media, and we always say thank you for those resources because it's always great to share. And also please be mindful, if any of the things that we talk about tonight do not fit well in your own institution, you might have your own policies that you have to adhere to, then please be mindful of that so it doesn't put your own institution at risk of you know, making them vulnerable during an inspection. So tonight we made a quick reference to the teaching standards in case we have any ECTs or second year teachers or any people who are doing training in teaching, and any who are joining in September or even in September 24, as we've had some people contact us in the last couple of weeks to say that they are thinking of starting next year. The link to teacher standards will be useful, and also the practical tips and ideas for activities for last minute. That should say writing, and that's my mistake, sorry about that. We'll get that changed on the PowerPoint before we send it out. And also Brian will be here with his third breathing and relaxation tip. Okay, so quickly with the teacher standards, they're all sitting there. The one that I added this time for teachers, for teaching standard 3, was the promotion of high levels of literacy, because obviously literacy within English, whether it be in another language, is still literacy. So that's pertinent to this training session, that maybe not to the other two. Okay, so my first tip for being able to access the writing and give you some sort of ideas about last minute revision would be to have 3 of each, which would be specific to the individual. So what I did to prepare for tonight's session, I do this when I'm teaching anyway, is I would have, I've trawled through all the past papers and all the bits and pieces that I know students get asked in the exam, and I would maybe choose, say, colours. I'd put the word colour on the board. I might do it in the target language as well, if I felt that was appropriate. Obviously, at the moment, the exams are written, the questions are written in the target language, and then I maybe ask the students to give me 3 colours, hold them up on their whiteboard. They might then do a swap shop around the class. That might be another way of doing it. So instead of just getting them sat on their seats, you may say, right, write down 3 colours, and I want you to rush around the classroom and find another couple. And then the first person back to your seat, you get some points, or you win a chocolate or something like that. I also might decide to put animals, body parts, school subjects and vegetables on the board. Again, you could do it in the target language or in English, and I might put the students into smaller groups and say, right, blow a whistle or tap your hands or whatever on the desk, or clap. get them to rush to the board each individually. They have to write a word, run back to their group, the next one goes, and the group that gets the quickest 3 for each of those 4, so 3 animals, 3 body parts, etc., would win a point. Or another way you could do that is to have your headings. So you might have buildings, places to visit, piece of furniture, future jobs scattered around the room on headings, on pieces of paper. And again, they do a similar activity where instead of rushing to the board, they rush to the bit of the classroom. That way you might tend to have maybe 5 or 6 of the categories up on the board. What I then often get them to do is, and I'll mention this again in the session over the next couple of minutes, is I get them in the exam when they go in, I'll say to them, right, look through the paper, first 2 or 3 minutes, see if you can work out what vocab you might need. So you might need some instruments, or you might need some places to work or daily routine, and empty your mind. So basically write down on the paper the 3 that you think might be useful. And I do that as well with verbs. So I might say to them, right, you've had a revision session before the exam. I want you to go in there. The first thing to do is on a piece of paper, a scrap piece of paper, or even on the exam paper, just empty your mind of the verbs. So they write down 5 verbs in the tenses. They might write the verb avoir, être down in the je, in the I, the he, the she, the we, and the they form, so that they know what to expect. Or they might just put some sort of notes on that, so that they're emptying their mind. And then as they go through the exam, they've done the initial donkey work at the beginning of the exam when they're tired, and then they can start to tick off so that they're using different tenses, different verbs, and so on. Okay, second tip from me is what I call martini verbs, and I've always called them this since time began, I think. Going back to the 70s, there was an advert on the telly that was anytime, any place, anywhere. And I always used to think these are the verbs that the students can use anytime, any place, and with any topic. And so I would get them to revisit some of the verbs in the present, the past, and the future. You could even, you know, these verbs are going to be the verbs that they can use with any topic that comes up in the exam. So I might link this back to 3 of each. So I might think, right, to buy, acheter in French, or whatever the equivalent is, kaufen in German and in Spanish. And then I would say, right, what 3 things can you buy? So it could be, I buy jeans, I buy a violin, I buy a sweet or a cake. And then we would say, I bought, with that vocabulary, I will buy. And they might even then, so you could actually use this instead of the 3 of each, or you could flip it and use the 3 of each and then revisit this with the verbs. And then I might get them to put it in the he, she, we, they, and then I might get them to put some last minute sort of phrases in there. For example, today, I play today, such and such, yesterday I played, tomorrow I will play. And that way you're just trying to get them into that frame of the main ones. And with your students who you think can't remember lots of these, then maybe you pick and choose, and you think, well, certainly words like visited and eaten and watched and maybe liked are going to be words, so you might just have 6 of them that you train your students to remember. Okay, the third thing from me is what I call fast writing, and this is where you put an appropriate bullet point on the board and the pupils have to plan an answer in no less than a particular number of words or minutes. So basically you're thinking, right, how many words do they have to write for this bullet point? Is it the 40 word? Is it the 150? Is it the 90 word? And therefore, how much time do you think they will need in the exam to give to that particular task? Again, this is good for a walking, talking mock going forward for next time you do exams with year 10 or your own year 11. And then also I would then get them to annotate it maybe around the bullet point with the appropriate vocabulary, and then maybe to pass that to someone to improve it or add to it or to translate it into English. And that way you're hitting lots of different sort of tasks that they have to do in the writing exam. One of the tips that I certainly do with my students is if there is a word in the bullet points that they don't understand, and here we have the word buildings in the 3 languages, I would get them to say, right, if you miss that bullet point out, you are going to significantly lose on content because you can only get 6 out of 10 if you don't include all the bullet points, certainly with AQA. And so I would say, train them to say, right, even if you don't know the bullet point, right, I like such and such because, and give a plausible answer on something that might be useful. And in that respect, at least you know your student might not be able to write anything else about that bullet point, but you've trained them into making sure that they can deal with it. Okay. So here are some examples of the bullet points. So I would maybe for hometown neighbourhood, I would group all those together. I might do a bit of revision on that. And the same with travel and tourism. And if anybody, I know the next writing exam, the first writing exam is on 26th for German, and the other two are after half term. I've got these for French all ready to go. So if anybody wants these packs in different sort of topics, please let me know and I will send them to you. Okay, my fourth tip, sorry, that's my mistake, is about cleansing your work. Now, this is something which I have always tried to do for a very long time since, well, years, certainly when coursework came in a long time ago, because I found this was something that was causing my students a bit of a problem. So again, this is not, this activity is probably a bit more kind of like what you could do going forward now, but certainly getting your students into the habit of thinking, when they go into the exam, what examples of connectives do they know? And just write them on the top. Just spend 5 minutes in that time just writing any connectives they know. And then as they use them through the course of the exam, ticking them off so that they're keeping their work fairly lots of different phrases. They're not keeping it the same, if you see what I mean. They're cleansing, I call it cleansing the work. It means that they're using different adjectives, different positive adjectives, different negative adjectives, and they're not using the same things in that particular task. Okay, so that way an examiner can see that the student loads lots of different things. So it could be you know, it might be that they know some connectives, some opinions, and so on forward. And the way I've done this is with, in the large picture, we've got like a frame that I would use, a piece of framework thing that I would get the students to populate as they went through the course. And then in terms of that, we've got the bullet points on bookmarks, which again, this might be something certainly not for the exam that you're probably going to be able to do because they'll not be able to cram this much in, but going forward might be something that you train them to do so that they're getting their own personal favorites on their bookmarks. And again, that's an example of a bookmark, how I would strip it out. One other thing is, as I've mentioned previously, I used concert bands, and this is something that they will not be able to wear in the exam, clearly. But if you've got an SMT or happy for your students in maybe 2 days before the exam, not in the exam, so please don't misinterpret that, okay, not in the exam, but to maybe wear some connectives. So you might have orange bands for connectives. So they had an orange band with 5 connectives on, a blue band with 5 past tenses on. And then obviously on the morning of the exam, they just cut them off, stick them in the bin, show I've got nothing on my arms, or they maybe don't wear them that day at all, but they've certainly worn them in the couple of days before, just so that they've got them on their hands, arms. And again, that will depend very much upon your scenario and very much upon your institution, that I did mention earlier at the beginning, when you have to be careful what your students are allowed to do. And the last one is spin the wheel, which I know Emma will mention a little bit later on, but this is something that I've done. So I've basically inserted a phrase into the wheel, and you spin the wheel, and you choose someone to answer it, and after 30 seconds you ask them to give you the answer, and you just look for some answers, or they say it to the partner, or they say it to you, or you can see them what they've written on their whiteboards. You know, they don't need to necessarily say it anymore because the speaking test is over. Show you. And another thing, another take on that is on the right hand side there. What I've done is I've got like a PowerPoint that's maybe got these words on. This is just a sample of some. So you might say to them, right, I want you to write me a sentence with travail bénévole in, and they have to write a sentence just including that word, because that could be anything, couldn't it? I like doing this, or my father does travail bénévole, or anything. It could be anything. It's just a different take on it. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Emma. Okay, Emma, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Elaine. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My first tip or strategy for students preparing for the writing exam is to really focus on infinitive structures. There's 2 benefits to this. So if your students are students that need a little bit more support, it's really beneficial for them to practice on infinitive structures, because it means they don't have to conjugate the verbs in the different tenses. So if you have got some students that are struggling, what you could do is you could give them a couple of infinitive phrases that refer to the past tense, a couple for the present, and a couple for the future, and they'll be able to use them with any of those verbs. Any of the martini verbs they could use, as Elaine mentioned, or even if there's an infinitive verb in the question, it's easier for them to use that if they've got some infinitive structures. So they'll be able to hit all the time frames just using those. So just a couple of examples I've got: I decided to go, or I used to do something. For the past, for the present, what I usually do or what I have to, and then for the future, what I'm going to do or what I would like to do. So all of those are correctly referring to a time frame. The other benefit of focusing on infinitive structures is for students that you're really trying to push. You want them to add more variety into their writing, you can give them a lot more options. So this is something that I would give to some of the students. Just a list of infinitive verbs. They can choose a few of them that they can practice, that they can then use in their writing exam. Again, you can do the peer assessment game. I think I mentioned this in just about every session, but you've got a list with the English and the Spanish on that side, the Spanish vocab here, and you just fold along this red line, hold it up between the students, and the students can test each other on that vocab. That's a good way of practicing. And again, if you do have a LanguageNet subscription, this is a great way to use your custom content feature. So you can add the infinitive structures there. So if you've got students that you want to support, just give them a couple in each time frame. If you're pushing your students, you can give them a much longer list, but it really does help add variety and save students having to conjugate every single verb. The next one is trying to get students to extend their answers. Now, this is something that you could definitely do in English with your students. Before moving on to doing it in the target language, I would recommend doing it in English. If you think about the questions that students are asked, for example, what do you do in your free time? A normal kind of natural response would be something like, I play football because it's fun. That's not going to cut it in the writing exam. They need a lot more detail, they need more structures in there. So getting them in English to think about how they would improve that answer. So one thing I would always get students to do is to think about what, when, where, with who, and why. So those kind of key questions, because you can easily take, I play football, I like it because it's fun, into something a bit more complex just by adding those details in. So you can see here, on Mondays, I play football on the beach with my friend Sam, kind of different things that you can add in. Another thing to suggest to your students to extend their answers is to always give a negative. So if you say that you like something, you can also say, well, I don't like basketball because it's boring, something like that. You can say what someone else does. You can also get students to say what they used to do. And again, that could be useful with those infinitive structures. Like in Spanish, if you've got solía with an infinitive verb, you can say what you used to do. And also say what you'll do differently in the future. Again, what, when, where, who, with, and why. So getting students to think about how to extend answers in English can be really, really helpful because it's not natural for them to write such a sort of long paragraph about what they do in their free time. So I recommend doing that one in English. This is a brilliant activity for getting students, again, to extend their answers and to use different connectives, different structures. This is something that was shared with me by a colleague, and it works brilliantly. So you can see that you've got a sentence in the middle. So in this one, really straightforward, simple sentence, I work as a builder. And you can see dotted around it, there are different connectives which are prompting students to extend their answer. So dado que, given that, or because, and, but, also. Okay, so students are building up their answer from a really simple sentence. They're building it up by adding more detail and using different connectives. It's quite good to kind of number them. And students can follow that pattern all the way around. So if you look at the example one, you got trabajo como albañil, so I work as a builder because it is interesting and it's quite easy, but it's very tiring. So students are building up bit by bit. Elaine pointed out as well that some students are very visual. When they learn, so when they get into the exam, they might actually be able to picture that kind of structure, that clock layout of the connectives, and that might help them extend their answer as well. Once you've got a simple sentence in the, sorry, once you've got the kind of template of this, you can change the middle sentence to anything, to adapt to any topic. It's a really, really quick starter activity. If you just change the middle sentence to something else related to your topic and get students to write a little paragraph, it works really well as a starter. The next one, and it's related to what Elaine was talking about when she was talking about clean up your work, kind of getting some star phrases in there for your students. So what I always kind of think is the best thing to do is to give students some examples that they can use across any topic. The other thing is they don't need to be bombarded with lots and lots. They can literally just choose a couple that they can remember that they can then use in their writing. So this is an example that I created with a colleague in my last school. So you can see we've given it the kind of mnemonic of piscina. That again is something really helpful for students when they get into the exam. They can kind of use that as a checklist. So they can write piscina at the top of their writing paper, and they can see P, right, that's perfect. Have I used an example of perfect tense? I, idiom, have I used one of those? So you can kind of get them to check off as they write in the exam. You can see there's a few examples here. Again, like with idioms, you want them to be able to be used across all topics. So fairly simple ones. It's really easy. It's really expensive. I'm really fed up. They could be used across any topic. You just need to ask students to learn one of those to see if they can add that into their writing exam. If you're stuck for any idioms, the Language Nut Instagram page has got lots and lots of suggestions for those that you can use. So that's a way of kind of breaking it down, giving students a little bit of a prompt in the exam to add in those phrases. And then you could do a couple of examples with your students. So you've got a fairly basic paragraph here. And then you've got a kind of improved example. So you could work with students, model it with them as to how you could improve it. So you've got, I like going to the cinema. You could model with your students, okay, my perfect tense sentence that I've used is I have always liked. So I'm going to change it there just to get an example of the perfect tense in there. So you could kind of give that a go live modeling with your students in class. And then the last tip is using randomizers. It's quite similar to Elaine's wheel that she suggested, the spinning wheel. This is a way of doing it with PowerPoint. You might have seen them already. What you need is lots and lots of questions, however, whatever kind of topic you're going to use on a PowerPoint. So this one's verbs, for example, work brilliantly with key verbs for mini whiteboard practice. You have lots and lots of slides. Elaine, could you just go back to the previous one just for a second?
Sorry.
Brilliant, that's it, thank you. And what you want is you want the PowerPoint to spin really, really fast. You can press the up arrow on your keyboard and it will stop on a random one. And then students can give you the answer on a whiteboard or in their books and hold it up for you to check, and then you can repeat it. So if you want to do that, you need lots and lots of slides on a PowerPoint, and I could send out examples if anybody wants them. You need to go to transitions on your PowerPoint, and here it's here where it says advanced slide. You just need to make sure that's clicked and it's set to 0. That means it will automatically change onto the next slide and it will move very, very quickly. So again, it works really, really well for key verbs. So you could get those on the board, students hold them up with mini whiteboards. And we've got a couple of other examples. If we go to the next slide, that's it, that's the verb one. And then one more, it's there you go. So you could do it with questions as well. So we've got some really quick questions that students could do. This is something I used to do in revision sessions. Get a question up on the board, students do the mini whiteboards, you go around and give them kind of some feedback on what they're writing, then you can move on to the next question. So different questions, different topics. Or you could just give them a sentence starter. So these are the kind of if I had a lot of money, if I was the Prime Minister, followed by the conditional, and you could get them to practice just finishing that sentence with the sentence starter. So you could just put those on the board, but if you want to do a randomizer, it kind of gets students engaged. They're a bit excited about which one it's going to land on. Brilliant, and I think I will pass over to Brian, who's going to give us a another breathing technique to keep our students calm going into the exams.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Elaine. So over the last, for those of you who have watched or attended the last 2 sessions, I went through calming breathing technique number 1, and then calming breathing technique number 2. And today I'm going to give you a third idea, and this one perhaps might engage if you've had any students who you've tried maybe the first couple of techniques with and they haven't engaged with this. The fact that this technique is used by Navy SEALs, Special Ops and Commandos might actually engage a couple more people, a couple more students from your cohorts, you never know. They use this in the high stress situations to help keep them calm. And one thing I will say, I'll just jump to the sort of note I've put at the bottom of the slide, is that I like doing this technique through the nose, and in and out through the nose. The official kind of written down one for the Navy SEALs say use the breath out through the mouth. I don't think it matters either way. It's really down to personal preference. But of course, if you're doing this in the middle of the exam room, you need to be quiet. So whatever works for you. So we're going to practice this now. Obviously, standing or sitting up straight in the chair. If you're doing an exam room, it's going to be sitting up in the chair. So the chair, I would just start by relaxing, making sure you're feeling relaxed. So you're just raising your shoulders and then let them drop, and just making sure that you're, feeling and connected and relax as much as you can. So we're going to breathe in for a count of 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and then hold again till 4. Now I forgot to put that on the slide. Actually, you hold again with the out breath on 4 as well. That's why it's 4 by 4. So it's I'll say that again and then we'll count it through. So it's in over 4, hold for 4, breathe out over 4, and hold for 4 again before breathing in again. So we'll do 3 rounds. I'm going to try and gradually slow it down each time. So here we go. We're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3. Last one. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. And breathe normally. Now, the Navy SEALs actually do this for up to 5 minutes. And again, I would say the same for this technique and the previous 2 as well. Do it for as long as you need. And it might be that you say to your students, try this, just doing it a few times, see how you feel. That's the important thing. And I think, for students who spend, we're all guilty of this actually, I would say, not just students. We spend all day looking at our phones and in our heads and stuff. Just by doing this and tuning into how they feel, actually will hopefully just calm them a little bit and just help them be present in the moment. And if it just means that they approach a question with a little bit more focus, then it may well help and may well help just make all the difference with those grades in that exam. We've got a couple of questions which just ping through. I'm going to mention in the chat. First of all, just to say welcome to everybody, of course, that we had from most corners of the UK. I think the furthest north I saw was Furness, Barrow in Furness, and the furthest south was Horsham, just up the road from here. And a couple of questions. Emma, there was ones asking about connectogram in French and star phrases in French. Do you have those, by the way, Emma?
I can definitely dig out connectograms in French. With the star phrases, the piscina, what I can do is send you out the Spanish one, and you could have to try and match it up with the French. Obviously, it's not going to work quite as an exact translation, but I'm happy to send those out, and you kind of add in your own phrases for those. I could do that.
Yeah, we've got one for French, which I can definitely send out, the star phrases. In fact, I've probably got 5 or 6 of them somewhere, so I'll send those. If you want that, just let me know and I'll send that out.
Brilliant, thank you both. So the email addresses are now on the screen and also in the chat for Emma and Elaine. You will all receive a copy of the slide deck from today, a copy of the recording, and the same for the last 2 weeks as well. We're going to send it all out again in the email tomorrow. But if there's anything specific that you want in terms of those activities like the star phrases or the connectogram, please email Emma or Elaine directly for those. I've got another another comment just saying thank you. Thank you to you, Celine, as well. Thank you all for coming. I'm just going to finish with a quick question, actually. One of the things I've noticed over this and the last 2 sessions we've done is that when we start at 4 o'clock, we were up to about sort of 50, 60 attendees. And then by 4:15, the number doubles. So my question is, I just wonder, and it's just for those of you who are still here, if you're willing to just pop a quick answer to this in the chat, should we start this at 4:15? Would that be better, or do you think that it's one of those things that if we said it started at 4:15, everyone would arrive at 4:30? So just put a quick time that would suit you best in the chat. and then let's just see what happens.
Yeah, and also to anybody who's asked for resources over the last 2 sessions, if you've not received them, can you please ask me again? Because I did send out loads of resources after the first and second one, and I'm not sure if I covered everybody. We had so many requests after the meeting. We're guaranteed that when I come off this session tonight, my inbox will be full, and tomorrow morning, and I'm sure Emma will be as well. Yeah, okay. Well, good luck to all your students for the writing. And again, if we can support you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's what we do as part of our job, and that's what makes our job so great.
Right. So a few answers so far saying 4 p.m. is perfect. Actually, somebody else saying 4:30. Someone saying 4:15. I guess it differs.
It swings and roundabouts.
Swings and roundabouts, absolutely. The next one is going to be at 4, which is the maintaining engagement at Key Stage 3.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see you all there, and we will take it. And you can continue to comment. So we're about to close this down, but you can still comment on the chat.
And please put on social media if you found this session useful. Was interesting. I had a conversation this morning. Was it this morning or last night? I think it was this morning with a colleague that I used to teach with, who was using the listening and reading presentations with their students before the exam this morning at 7 o'clock. They went in for an assembly and they put them in the hall and let them just listen to it while they were having their bacon butties. So it might be something that you consider might be useful. It might not be, but please give us a shout on social media if you found it useful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much, and see you again. Just the last question for Selena saying when's the next one? Is the 20th of June, if
20th
I
of
right?
June. Yeah, the next
Thank
webinar is the 20th of June. Yeah, there's a primary one coming just the week after half term, and then there's a couple of ALL events as well that are being live down in Sussex University. But if you're in that neck of the woods, watch out for those or contact us and we can give you details.
Absolutely, yeah, and we will send you links to sign up for the next one with the recordings as well. Lovely. Hope all the rest of the exams go well for your students.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.